Evening, everyone. I am Robin Agronin, and I'm so glad to welcome you to a conversation with Sarge and Benji Gene on behalf of the Jewish Federation of South Palm Beach County. A special welcome to the new faces joining us tonight. Our Federation Live virtual programs are among the many ways we are reaching out to bring our Jewish community together as we also work to meet the rising critical needs of our people here in Israel and beyond. And welcome to our final Giving Tuesday event. We offer today's programs in observance of this important international time to heal, help, and bring hope to those less fortunate. Through our annual campaign, our Federation's funding for more than 70 partner agencies here in Israel and around the world enables us to respond immediately in times like these. With our vital support, our agencies on the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis are able to continue, adapt, and increase their care for those most vulnerable in the face of unprecedented challenges. After our program, we'll email you some information about how to learn more, along with additional great virtual opportunities to connect. Just a quick note about Zoom. You are able to adjust the way your screen appears. If you would like to view the person who is speaking, please select Speaker View at the top of the screen. Now it's my privilege to introduce our presenters, Sarge and Benji Gene. Comedian Sarge is an entertainer who has performed worldwide to adoring audiences from some of the biggest stages in show business. From Radio City Music Hall to Major League Baseball's All-Star Game to entertaining our nation's troops in Iraq, Sarge's ability to improvise and tailor his show to specific audiences is uncanny. He delights audiences with humor that resonates with all ages. And he is much more than a comedian. Sarge is a self-taught piano savant, an author and motivational speaker. His humor comes from a very personal place as his road to success was not a smooth one. He is a proud father to his son and loving husband living in Florida. Benji Gene is a native of West Bloomfield, Michigan, and currently resides here in Boca Raton. He is married to his better three-quarter, Jen, and they have two children, Sophia and Caleb, who both attended Temple Bethel. Benji holds a bachelor's degree in history from Columbia University and currently serves as president of Keys Property Management. Recently, Benji became headmaster of the Gene Family Educational Initiative. In this endeavor, Benji has learned that he has no business being an educator and continues to be baffled by the amount of screen time his children are now required to have when he has been told for years to limit aforementioned screen time by the same great folks mandating it now. As the co-chair of the BMP division, Benji is afforded the luxury of giving back to the community he loves and calls home. Take it away, Benji.
Well, thank you very much, Robin, and good evening to everybody. I want to welcome Sarge, and I see that you decided on the highly formal attire tonight, so thank you very much. So we have some questions that were brought in from the community. And the first is, how did you come up with the name Sarge, or how did you become Sarge?
How did I become Sarge? Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for deciding to tune in. What a great thing this is for us all to be separate and together. It's what's so funny about what's been going on. It's not entirely funny, but what's been funny has been, you know, they said, oh, we're all in this together. We're just alone. So the name Sarge was given to me. It's not a name I took. It's not a name I picked. It came from the Beetle Bailey comic books. I found out much later. But when I first got to college at Boston University, which was my second college that I went to, I'd successfully academically excluded myself from Emory University in Atlanta, which was a shanda. And I transferred to Boston University. And as soon as I got there, they thought I looked like the dog from Beetle Bailey. I didn't know what Beetle Bailey was. I didn't know who the dog was. I didn't know who the characters were. But they just started calling me Sarge with a Boston accent. Hey, Sarge, how you doing? And I thought it was kind of cute, so I answered to it. And once you answer to something, especially, you know, around the house, that's what you're called. That's what you know, and so it became my name. It became the name by which I was known. This was 1981, and I have been Sarge ever since. So for the better part of, I guess, now 40 years, I've been Sarge.
Nice. Well, thank you. And to your point about, we're in this together, I feel like, if I get one more email that says we're in this together, and I'm sure you can relate, I'm going to drop my kids off at their house, right? It's a little difficult. I know you have a young one. How did you end up here in South Florida?
I was born in South Florida. I ended up here because I came home. I was born in Miami Beach, back when Miami Beach was Miami Beach, if you can think about it. Back when there were Jews, back when you didn't need a passport in order to get into Miami Beach, back when it was one language, Yiddish, back when everyone was sitting on a porch of one of those really fancy schmancy, Art Deco hotels along Ocean Boulevard. I was born in Miami Beach. And it's kind of a funny story how I was born. Well, maybe funny to some. My birth mother was an Orthodox Jewish girl who got pregnant in Chicago because that's where she was going to grad school, and that's where she was studying to be a doctor. Very, very religious family from Russia, Jewish family. She got pregnant with a black man, which, think about this. This is 1961, not 1999 when it started to become fashionable to have a boyfriend in the NBA. I'm talking about 1961. And so the actual story going forward was, there wasn't any kind of, illicit activity. She just sat on a bench near a basketball court. To make a long story short, she became pregnant. And when she realized that she was pregnant, she knew how she got pregnant. And so she fled Chicago to where else? Miami Beach. Checked into the Eden Rock. And the reason she checked into the Eden Rock was because the Fontainebleau was apparently fully booked. So she went to the Eden Rock and decided she was going to carry the pregnancy out to full term. And thank God that she had chosen that. There were other options that she might have chosen. And had she, you'd still be talking and we'd be listening to Robin do a pitch for an hour or a statement about intent. So consequently, she had the baby at Mount Sinai Hospital, which incidentally, we all know this is where Moses received the 10 Commandments in America. And it just so happened, the chief of staff, head of OBGYN, was a best friend of my grandpa from Brooklyn. And the way the story went, and it's a true story, I vetted it through 7 relatives throughout my family tree. Thank you, 23andMe. Was my grandfather, got a call from my mother. She said, we're trying to adopt. I can't conceive. We're looking for a baby. Do you know anybody? My grandfather said, do I know anybody? Because all Jews have a person for everything. We have a dermatologist. We have, if you want a proctologist, Jews have, do you want a gentle one? Do you want a guy that gets manicures? Do you want somebody with a long finger, short finger, big hand, small hand? My grandfather had a guy, best friend, used to play stoop ball with him in Brooklyn, et cetera, et cetera. He says, I'm going to give him a call. And so he calls his friend, who's the head of OBGYN at Mount Sinai, and he apparently had owed him a favor. He says, I need a favor. My mother said, a favor? What kind of favor can you call in for a baby? He said, let me tell you. He went in 1947 to interview for the job. He never came home. Every day since, I've been moving his Buick, alternate side of the street, parking in Brooklyn for him. Does he call? Does he send me a note? Does he say thank you? Nothing. He said, so he'll get us a baby. And so he calls him on a payphone. He calls Miami Beach from Brooklyn. He says, Harry, it's Herman. My daughter is trying to adopt a baby. I was wondering if you have anything in stock. So the doctor said, you know what, Herman, you're lucky. He said, something just came in today. So what are you talking about? He said, a girl came in from Chicago, no husband, no boyfriend. It's a secret. Nobody should know about this. She just wants to have the baby. She's a smart girl, beautiful girl, white, milky white skin, well-educated, Jewish family. I mean, every box is checked. Come down when she gives birth, which is any day now. I'll take care of it. And my grandfather said, that's amazing. I'm on my way. So the doctor actually said, you're on your way. When are you coming? He says, I'm coming today. I'll fly down today. He says, well, if you're coming today, do me a favor. Bring me a babka from Brooklyn. He says, maybe a chocolate babka, no nuts. They don't have any good babka in Miami Beach. Bring me a babka, which is a very Jewish thing. Gentile people don't say, where are you? Are you coming over now? Bring me some whitefish salad. Only Jews want to know where you are so they can ask you to pick something up for them if you're near something they like, some food they like. So he went over to Ebbingers at Fort Hamilton Parkway, picked up a chocolate babka, no nuts, jumped on a flight, flew to Miami Beach, got out of the car, ran in. You could just run into the hospital in those days. Today, it's a whole Homeland Security thing, because of terrorism. But, back in those days, you could just run into the hospital, go to the operating room and grab a scalpel and start working. Today, like Mount Sinai in Miami, it's a much different situation. They've added additional layers of security at the front of Mount Sinai. If you've ever been to the hospital there, they have a third and fourth woman in her early 90s who volunteers to sit at the front and fill out "Hello, my name is" stickers, which we have found at the Pentagon is the #1 form of deterrence for terrorism in America is elderly Jewish women volunteering at the admissions area of hospitals. He runs in, he goes into the elevator, he goes to the 3rd floor. Where's Dr. Kraft? There he is. He's got his babka. Here you go. Where's my baby? Takes him down the hall. See that girl? She's about to give birth any hour now. She broke her water. I'm a little concerned. It looked like cappuccino, quite frankly. So not concerned. It looks like it's going to be okay. And I want you at the delivery. And so my grandfather, he gives him the babka. They hug, they kiss. He says, go clean up, get him a scrub suit. So he gets him a whole smock and the whole thing and the mask. Now it's time for me to be born. My mother is there. She's pushing. The doctor's there. My grandfather's there. And he starts the process. I start crowning. And the doctor says, go ahead, Herman. You finish it. Bring your grandchild into the world. And at that time, they didn't have gender reveals. They didn't have any way of knowing what it was going to be first. So as it turns out, they had no idea what was coming. And out I come. And my grandfather was said to have delivered me at the delivery. And he looked at the doctor and he looked at the girl, my biological mother. And he looked at the doctor and he looked at my mother and he looked at me. And he said, I think we left him in a little too long. He seems burnt. Does it look burnt to you? The color is a little off. He's not really. And so the next thing you know, I'm in a basket, and my parents came down and took me to Great Neck. And when you talk about Beshert, you think about 1961, you think about the circumstances of me being born between a black man and an Orthodox Jewish woman. Think about this. I would have been unadoptable. Nobody's out there saying, excuse me, do you have any mocha children? Do you have any mixed race people? People wanted, what they wanted. And next day I'm going to Great Neck. So I went from being unadoptable if no one knew what was going on to being born to then moving to Great Neck, which is the equivalent of hitting the Powerball and being struck in the ass by lightning on the same day, if you think about it. So you're looking at one of the luckiest people alive. I am a lucky man. To be me, I'm lucky for my circumstances. It was meant to be. And I wasn't in Miami Beach for long, but I came back. And and that was in 1990. I moved back to Florida.
Excellent. And that leads into another question one of our viewers had, which was, what are your memories of high school in your high school days in Great Neck?
I didn't go to high school in Great Neck. I was evaluated as extra special. I was an extra special child. I was an only child. I was an extra special child. But my father went to Poly Prep in Brooklyn, which many of you probably know from the old neighborhoods. My father went to Poly Prep, and he thought it would be a great idea for me to go to prep school. And so I played hockey, I played football, I did all these sports, and I ended up going to an all-boys Episcopalian / Catholic prep school in Connecticut, boarding school. I was the only black and the only Jew. Now, Connecticut. Connecticut is where Hitler went to summer camp, Connecticut. The only black and the only Jew in the whole school. I later found out at one of my reunions that I was a 2-person quota. I covered two birds with one stone. Only Jew, only black guy. I played hockey. I played football, and I was also the organist in their chapel because I had musical ability. So I played a lot of the music that I heard on Friday night at shul. I would play at their Catholic services on a daily basis, and they didn't even know the difference because any song that you play slowly sound, everything sounds like, Mozart from like, the 1200s when everyone still had one name. So to make a long story short, I went to all boys Episcopalian boarding school, and don't believe I didn't have my share of, you want to talk about, anti-Semitism, racism, all blended into, I'm like a one-man hate crime focal point. Like, so when I hear all these people complaining about this and complaining about that, listen, I've been living with this my entire life. I have freckles. I was adopted. I'm Black. I'm Jewish. I think I'm at the bottom part of the seesaw, and there's a million people at the top of it trying to push it down. You know what I mean?
Well, you seem to have done pretty well there. And so you have fantastic material. I watched some of it online. And one of the questions was, what is your process for coming up with the original ideas, developing them, and making them nonstop, roaring out loud funny?
Like tonight?
Exactly.
Like working my entire life to end up on people's computer screens in their home during a pandemic lockdown. This is really, I can't wait till we can get back together again, just so that we can be in the same room. The process is different for all comedians. The process is, for me, it started, when you start comedy, you watch other people doing it and you try to decide if you're going to do it the way they do it, if you're going to tell jokes, or if you're going to have a certain style or a certain the devices that you use for comedy. My process is living life and sharing life with people from my own voice, from my own experience. I'll give you an example. If I go to, there's a place in Boynton Beach called The Boys. It's on the Delray Boynton border. So I go to The Boys, and I don't know if you've ever risked your lives also, but it's an open air produce market with a roof. And you go there, and it's very crowded. People are nasty. It's really a challenge, to go to The Boys. You have to literally wear a goalie uniform from ice hockey in order to go there without getting injured. People running into each other. People who are horrible drivers are now in control of a cart, but they're using it as a walker. And they're using your Achilles tendons as the brakes. You understand? So I go there, and I'm going to check out the store, and there's a guy in front of me. He's in the way, and he's fumbling around in front of him. He's doing this with his face. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Go around me," yelled at me. I guess you're from Brooklyn. So he said, "How did you know that?" I said, "Because you're nasty and you're ready to start a fight." He says, "Just go around me." I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "They weigh these cherries. I'm taking off the stems." I said, "Well, they have pits too." He said, "You got a knife?" He was going to pit the cherries and stem the cherries before he weighed the cherries to buy the cherries. Life presents constant, especially in Florida, life presents constant opportunities for comedy without having to write anything. Some comics are very heavily written. Ray Romano, heavily written. Brian Regan, heavily written. Jerry Seinfeld works on bits and jokes and turns of phrases and wordplay. And so you find your process. And somewhere around the mid-2000s, around 2005, 2006, I met a guy named Gary Marshall. He saw me perform in Los Angeles. And he called me and he said, "What are you so happy about?" He found my number from the producers of this show that I performed on. He saw me perform. He says, "What are you so happy about?" I said, "What am I so happy about?" I couldn't even think of what he meant. But he said, "Well, most comedians are unhappy, miserable, conflicted, neurotic, alcoholic, drug addict, depressed people." He said, "You're so happy. What are you so happy about?" And I told him, I'm happy that I was adopted. I was traded for a babka. And it took about 3 minutes for him to stop laughing. But as he put himself forward as someone that he wanted to mentor me, told me I was as funny as anyone he had ever seen. He said, "Listen, you don't have to write." He said, "Just be." And my whole process changed, because up until that point, I'd been doing a lot of writing. And once Gary Marshall, a legend, a guy who had worked with Gleason, Jack Parr, Joey Bishop, Robin Williams, the list is endless, as a guy who worked with all those people, He said to me, you don't have to write. Things are funny because you say them, not because you write them. So don't write. And so over the course of the last 15 of the 29 years I've been doing this, I go out on stage and I do a live show. I just walk out and I feel the energy of the room, and I feel the room I'm in. I see the people, the men without socks, the women in animal prints, you know, people with a sweater over their shoulders with them cuffed. That's how you know you're in Boca. When you see men with sweaters with the cuffs rolled up in the middle, they brought it just in case the air conditioning is a little too strong. But they didn't really bring it because of that. They brought it because their wife told them to bring a sweater. Take a sweater. I'm not going out to the car. But the point is, my process has become showing up and trusting God. I know that sounds, and I don't mean to be patronizing. I believe that God gave me the talent that I have. He gave me the gift. He wakes me up every morning and he lets me go to sleep every night. He gave me the unique life that I have and the unique set of DNA and the way my brain works. So what I do is I trust God with every single show, because it's a blessing to do what I do for a living. Believe me, it's not digging ditches. It's not filing. I'm not in sales. My product is me, and me is my life experiences, my mind, my personality, whatever talent I might have. All of that is God-given. So I take no credit for any of those things. All credit goes to God, and then I show up on stage. I must do about 30 minutes of preparation before I come out, where I meditate, I do guided visualization, and I do a prayer. And my basic prayer is, where would you want me to go tonight? What do you want me to do? What should I say, and to whom? I pray that every morning. I pray that every afternoon, and most ferociously before I go on stage, because my prayer and meditation protocol eradicates fear. I have no stage fright. And if you notice, a lot of artists, a lot of performers, they have a drink. Some of them use other stuff because it's scary for them to go on stage in front of people. I don't have that fear because I turn the entire process over to God. I let him do the show. He uses me as a paintbrush. I'm not the masterpiece. I'm not the artist. I'm the paintbrush that God uses to make a beautiful evening, to make a beautiful hour and a half. And many of my shows go 2 hours because God he likes the sound of laughter, especially when Jews are laughing. When Jews are laughing, it shouldn't end after all the crying that we've done throughout the course of the last 100 years. The laughter should never end for Jews. And so I'm given that gift. I'm so blessed, and that's my process.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. And obviously right now, our community, the world, we're all sheltering in place in our homes, you know, taking off the comedy hat and moving to the life coach hat. You know, what is a good way for shut-ins to stay positive during the coronavirus? You know,
Well, first of all, it's a blessing.
Talk to people about that.
It's a blessing in Florida for people to be told to stay home, primarily because the death rate goes down by 5,000% just because these people aren't driving. The number one cause of death in Florida before coronavirus was intersections. I live in a place where the post office is closed every other week because someone drove through the lobby. So I would come out of this entire pandemic with mandatory testing for people who can't turn their head this way or this way, people who have no peripheral vision, no hearing, no vision, no memory, no idea where. These are people that walk in the garage and ask themselves 4 times a day, why am I in the garage? Where are my keys? How fresh is this cottage cheese? And now these people get behind the wheel of a car and they drive. And so we have the pandemic. You know, in other parts of the country where there isn't a lot of people who pass away. I mean, you got to remember, this is Florida. It's at the point now where, yes, it is sad and tragic when people lose a spouse, a child, a neighbor, a friend. But I mean, it's Florida. A lot of people pass away in Florida. The flies drop like people here. But with the pandemic staying in place, it's actually, not a good thing for my career. It's the worst thing that's ever happened for me because I do 4 shows a week. There isn't a place between Aventura and Jupiter that I don't hit twice. And I have the good fortune to work for all of these people in gated communities, country clubs, temples, synagogues, Jewish organizations, Chabads, fundraisers, dinners. So for me, it's a tragedy. For me, it's very frightening. But the truth of the matter is, a disproportionately large amount of us will not die from this, are not going to get sick from this. I believe that everyone that is supposed to succumb to something this horrible is going to, and everyone who isn't. And fortunately, so many of us are not afflicted and are not sick. And I know my heart goes out and I send love to all of those people who may be watching tonight who've been touched by this, affected by this. I recently lost my father a couple of weeks ago, and he was 92. And it had been a long time. He had, his quality of life had diminished significantly for a really long time. 92, and he really hasn't walked or moved or had any quality of life. So for him, it was a blessing to no longer be struggling. And now I have my 85-year-old mom. And without them, my adoptive family who adopted me at birth. A great Jeffco story. I would not have any of the things that I have. I wouldn't have the career that I have because growing up in my mother's house was enough. If I did no other material other than the things that went on in my mother's house, I wouldn't have to do anything else. I mean, just the fact that my life was entirely divided up into the girl is coming, the girl was just here. The girl was just here, the girl is coming. That was my life. So you'll probably ask me to go into that a little bit more, but with Corona and being in place, my son is 11. He's going to homeschooling. My wife is 41. She's homeschooling, finishing up her graduate level stuff in medical imaging and radiology and all that. And so she's just finished her finals. And me, sitting at home, doing Zoom events for free for numerous organizations and trying to bring a little love and a little humor and a little light into people's lives. Doing stand-up in this format is absolutely the most contrived, forced thing. It's impossible to do it here because you have no feedback, no energy in the room, no laughter that you can, really grab onto. So this is a wonderful format. I'm just glad to be with you. And what can I say? We're raising money for JewFed, which is one of the greatest things there is.
That's right. And I'm sorry to hear about your father. May his memory be it for a blessing. So talk to us a little bit more about the girl is coming, the girl is going. I don't know about that.
Well, in my house, the biggest Jewish holiday of the year. I know we have a lot of big holidays, a lot of little holidays. The big one was Tu B'Shvat. That's when the cleaning girl was coming. We called it Tu B'Shvat. And my mother would ride through Great Neck on a horse yelling, "The girl is coming, the girl is coming." That meant that everyone in the house was on white alert. We had to flip mattresses, do windows, vacuum, clean. The house had to be spotless when the girl gets there because there were so many things that the girl didn't do. The girl doesn't do laundry. She doesn't do windows. She doesn't wipe the slip covers. She doesn't dust. The girl basically did nothing. She would come, she would watch some soap operas, have lunch, and then go back to flushing. That was her entire purpose. I would like to have the girl's agent, basically. Whoever the girl's agent was, I'd like to hire that person for my career. But we had to clean that. So if you were eating, for example, anytime you ate in my house, my mother would tell you to go over the sink. Over the sink! I thought that was my name. Before it was Sarge, my name was Over the Sink. Anytime I ate, you had to eat over the sink. The girl was just here. The girl was just here. You have to eat over the sink. We had Seder in my house around the sink. You couldn't go to the bathroom in my house without my mother coming to find you. Don't splash. If you're sitting down, don't splash. The girl was just here. Anything you did, the girl was just here, or the girl, what are you doing? The girl is coming. Laundry, the laundry machines, are running constantly. There's constantly laundry. My mother, even to this day, when you visit her, she wants to know, take it off. I want you to take that off. We need what you're wearing to complete a dark load. I only have socks and a pair of shorts, so even when I go there now, I have to wear a robe and wait for my clothes to come back. My mother's constantly doing laundry. So the whole girl is coming thing, it was a very big deal, a very important deal, a very big celebration in my house when the girl was coming.
I can relate. I feel like all of us on this call, anytime the cleaning girls were coming, my mother would say, clean up, it's time to clean before the cleaning girls get here. You're hilarious. One person wanted to know, how did you decide to become a comedian? What was it that put you over the edge to say, this is the career path that I wanted to take?
You don't decide. It picks you. It ultimately picks you. It's not like sticking with a job. You either can do this or you can't. And if you really want proof of that, go watch a comedian that you don't find to be particularly funny or no one else thinks is particularly funny. And there are a lot of comedians that it picks you. It picks you. I decided to do this because I know this may sound a little ephemeral, but a vision came to me. In 1990, I got clean and sober. I had been homeless. I'd been drug addicted. I had, about an 8-year period from the time I was in college until I was 28, 29 years old, where I was using drinks, and then I used alcohol, and then I used drugs, and then the drugs got harder. And it all collectively happened in a 1-week time frame. I was stealing from family and a few close friends to support my drug habit. And I had a monster drug habit, no joke. I ultimately ended up smoking crack, like the My Pillow guy. I'm not as successful as him because my pillows aren't machine washable. But I was smoking crack, believe it or not. I went from alcohol to cocaine to crack to other hard substances. I mean, I literally was doing PCP, crack, and a thing called ketamine. So if there are doctors or physician's assistants out there, you know exactly what I was doing, all of that simultaneously. And I ended up without a place to live. And a lot of my friends who I knew in the city didn't know that I was homeless. I still had clothes, but I had nowhere to go. And I used one of my friend's apartments one night. He was out of town. He said, I'll leave you the keys with my doorman on Park Avenue. I went to his apartment and I literally robbed his belongings. I took his watches, his jewelry. I went down to 46th Street to the Orthodox jewelry district over there and sold a bunch of his stuff for money for drugs, and went back to the part of town, which was, I was down by Houston and Pitt by the Manhattan Bridge. That's where I spent most of my homeless time. And this guy, when he got back from his ski vacation in Aspen, he saw all his stuff missing. I left him a note. He came down and found me, and he said to me, where's all my stuff? I said, well, I stole it, and I sold it for drug money. And he said, what kind of drugs? So I said, well, I smoke crack. And he looked at me and he says, you're like 300 pounds. What do you mean you smoke crack? So I told him, well, it was some very high calorie crack. It wasn't skinny crack. It was fattening crack. So he laughed. And instead of calling the cops or instead of pressing charges, he said, let's get you some help. And 24 hours later, this was my friend Todd, ironically rhymes with God, but God doesn't have 2 Ds. He said, let's get you some help. And 24 hours later, I was in Delray Beach at a rehab. And I walked into the rehab and a guy met me at the front door and he said, you must be the new arrival. And I said, wow. I said, you're very astute. He says, are you an alcoholic? And I said, no, I'm a drug addict. He said, how many drinks did you have on the plane? I said, I had 11. He says, well, it's a good thing you're not an alcoholic. I said, why? He said, an alcoholic would have had 12 drinks on the plane. And I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, well, I want you to go in the other room and pray for the obsession to be removed to drink and drug from your life. And so I went in the other room and I did as he told me. And I prayed for the obsession to be removed. I'd never prayed before, really. I'd been bar mitzvahed. I went to shul every week, but I never really connected with God. I never really connected with prayer. And I went in the other room and I did what he told me. And I came out and he said, come on, let's take you to your unit. And he took me to a room. And this was on A1A in Delray Beach, right near the Woolbright Bridge there. And I went to my room. And the next day I woke up I neither had the desire to use drugs or alcohol. I never took another drink or a drug from that point forward. And that was December 26, 1990. So this December will be 30 years I haven't done that. The third day of treatment, they encouraged us to go to the beach and meditate. Another thing I'd never done before. Think about what you would do with your life if you couldn't fail. If you had God in your life and you were clean and sober and you had a clear path to success, what would you be doing? And so I sat and they said, close your eyes, put your hands on your knees and just breathe and see what you come up with. And about a minute into that process, I was sitting at the beach and I instantly thought of my grandfather that provided my family with me as a gift to them to adopt from his best friend. And I thought about all of the nights at Grossinger's that I sat under the table at the show. But one night in particular came to me during this meditation. And I hadn't thought of this. The thought never occurred to me. And I remember seeing Don Rickles, performing at the Playhouse at Grossinger's. And I was under the table in the front row at the show by my grandfather's legs, my Poppy Herman. And I was watching Rickles work and he was sweating and his tuxedo, his bow tie was off and his jacket was hanging on the mic stand and the audience was in shambles. They were screaming and draped over each other, knocking over drinks, laughing. He was destroying the room with laughter and joy. And I remember thinking, I was 6. I remember looking at the audience, not at Rickles, and thinking, I don't know what this guy's talking about, but I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And that's the thought that occurred to me while I was meditating. And I got back to the treatment center and we had a little group, a little group therapy about our meditation. And they asked everybody what they thought of, and some people couldn't do it. And some people's mind wandered. And mine was, I'm going to be a comedian. And I don't care what it takes. That's what I'm going to do because that's what I'm supposed to do, because that was one of the first genuine. And so ultimately, when I got out of that rehab center and I ended up in a halfway house, I began to do open mics. And I began to realize that this is what I was supposed to be doing. And I moved to New York and I started doing comedy in New York in the most horrible open mic, any place with a microphone and a little riser, with nobody sitting there, kind of like tonight. And I would do open mics, and I had a very rapid rise through the open mic circuit in New York. And one night I did a taping for $35. You could pay for them to tape you in front of an audience of people that you brought at Caroline's on Broadway. And I did a tape, and for $35, because you got to have a tape. If you're going to get any work, everyone says, oh, send your tape. So I went to this place, I paid $35. I did my set on stage in front of, they would book 10 comics and everybody had to bring 20 people. They're called bringer shows. So I brought my 20, the same 20 that I had brought like 17 other times to other shows. And the other 10 comics brought 20. So there were a couple of hundred people, 200, 300, 400 people in this room. So I did my set and it went really well. And the next day I get a call. Hi, this is William Morris Agency. We'd like you to come up to the agency and visit with us. I said, why? They said, well, you blew the room apart last night on Broadway at Caroline's. And I said, oh, you were there? You saw? He goes, no, but we heard about it, which is sometimes better. And what time are you coming? So I showed up and I went from the open mic circuit to being represented by one of the top entertainment agencies in the world. And now I live in Boynton Beach and I do shows at the library for free. So my career is really on a meteoric trajectory. And
Absolutely.
I'm performing during the pandemic on my phone.
That's right. That's right. Well, we are so very grateful for that. That's right. And we're so grateful that you could join us. We wish you and your family continued health and safety.
What are you wrapping it up? Is this the wrap up?
I am wrapping it up. That's the wrap up. We got the hook.
Why? Because it's all about money. Because we've got to raise money.
Well, we do have to raise money. That's where we're going.
So why don't we pass around a virtual Karen Amikan and we can all plant trees in Israel?
Well, you're a huge star. I thought you were writing the check.
No. Let me tell you a quick story about raising money. I did a tour of Israel last year. I did 7 cities in Israel. And, my whole life, I planted trees. The only time my father ever gave me money was when I said, can I have $1? He said, well, what do you need it for? I said, I'm planting trees in Israel. So he gave me the money. I went to school. So for 10 years, I planted trees in Israel. Last year, I'm going to Israel to do a concert tour, and I wanted to see my trees. I figured it's been 40 years. I want to see my trees. I was there for 2.5 weeks. I didn't see one tree. I was in Gush Etzion. I was in Beit Shemesh. I was in Jerusalem. I went everywhere. I was in Haifa. I was in Dead Sea. No trees. So finally, I do my shows, and on the last night, we're in Tel Aviv. And who do you think is there but the entire leadership of the country? Netanyahu's there. The Knesset's there. So they said, do you want to meet the president? We're having a meet and greet for you afterwards. You want to meet? I said, yes, and find out who's in charge of the trees. So we went in the room. They introduced me to Netanyahu. I said, hello, Bibi, how are you? Who's in charge of trees? So he pointed over. He goes, the guy there with the comb over. He's got a comb over. He's about 5 feet tall. He's in charge of trees. So I went over there, and I said, excuse me, sir. He says, oh, you were very funny. He said, we left and left and left. I said, if you left so much, why are you still here? He says, oh, my accent, I left. No, we left. We left. I said, where are my trees? Out of curiosity. He says, where are you from? I said, I'm from Great Neck. He says, oh, Great Neck. Well, it's a nice area, very rich. Yes, we get a lot of donations. So I said, well, where are my trees? I planted trees for 10 years. He said, let me ask you something. He says, when you planted the trees, he says, did you get a certificate? So I said, yes, I wallpapered my room with certificates. He says, what do you think the certificates are made from? He says, paper. He says, we have to plant the trees to print the certificates.
Nice.
So please give with everything you got. This is a very difficult time to raise money. And we know you've got it because you're Jews. Let's be honest. We're not talking to a bunch of Gentile people here. It's not a bunch of cheap Italians. We're talking to Jews. Every Jew has a stash of cash someplace at the assisted living or in Boca in the garage. So please give. And the best way to put a smile on this whole situation is to make sure that the Jewish Federation gets what it needs, so that there's dinners, so that there's more dinners. So thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us.
I love all of you for coming in and visiting with us. I look forward to seeing you in person somewhere in the very near future, hopefully in Jerusalem, where we can burn some eggs and some shank bones and get together and we'll go look for the afikomen and my trees.
Sounds like a plan to me. Well, have a good one. And thank you all for being with us tonight. I'm grateful to be able to share just a few more moments with you. As Sarge started out, I'm going to finish. We're living in an unprecedented time. And today on Giving Tuesday, I'd like to ask for your attention for just a few more moments. What I'd like to do is have everyone close your eyes. I can see some of you. I can't see all of you, so this is going to be on the honor system, okay? Now picture a home here in Boca. Picture 2 young children playing a board game on the living room floor. Everything seems normal. But look one room over into the kitchen. Dad has just come downstairs, weary from a long day of applying for unemployment. He was laid off from his job 4 weeks ago, no fault of his own. While his children play, Mom consoles her defeated husband. Just 4 weeks ago, this family felt secure. Dad had a great job, and the family never missed a payment on anything and never asked for anything from anyone. Now, they struggle just to place food on the table. Mom is trying her best to be strong for her children and her family, but the toll is unbearable. The children, only 10 and 8, don't fully understand what is happening, but they sense it throughout the house on a daily basis. The stress, the fear, the shame. Can you see this family? Can you feel their fear? Hold on to that feeling. Now, I want you to picture this family just after receiving life-preserving bunnies from our federation. The stress lifted, the smiles returning, knowing that they have meals to feed their children, knowing that they won't default on their rent payments, children seeing their parents happy once again. Please imagine those smiles. Now I ask you this, what would you give right now to put those smiles back on the faces of that family? Would you provide $500 in grocery money? Could you provide $400 to assist them with rent? Can we leave this family without assistance? These families are in our community tonight. While your dollars go towards over 70 worthwhile agencies, a home and abroad, tonight I want you to think of that family. Think of what your dollars could do to change their lives. We hear all the time about how we should give until it hurts and then give more. Tonight isn't about hurting, it's about healing. This is what a community does. You have all been so wonderfully generous already. Can we do more? I have met many of you, and I know we can. I live by a motto: we suffer in imagination more than reality. Tonight, there are those suffering in reality. These are our neighbors, our families, and our friends. Let our community be the ones to help them rise again. I ask that you consider, even if you've given, to give a little bit more. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Benji, for those heartfelt words. And thank you, Sarge, for giving us all the opportunity to laugh a lot tonight. And to everyone who joined us, thank you for doing so, and we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Look for your email with additional meaningful ways to connect with our Federation and our Jewish community during these unprecedented times. Together with our caring community, we heal, we help, and we give. Stay safe and be well. Good night, everybody.
Bye.